Greetings, my dear viewer. This is a channel about marital infidelity and about the consequences if one spouse starts to cheat on the other. If you, as well as I do, support true family values and condemn cheating, then subscribe to the channel and give this video a like. Let's get started. Realizing that my wife of 7 years had deceived me not once, but twice, and was poised to do it again, left me utterly devastated. I had read about the emotional tempest that consumes a person when they discover their marriage was built on falsehoods. That storm crashed into me without mercy, a force as overwhelming as Katrina swallowing New Orleans. My defenses shattered, and the truth surged in like a relentless tide, sweeping away everything I had constructed with her. I mourned. When the flood of grief finally subsided, it left nothing in its wake. My marriage, reduced to rubble, trust, annihilated, respect, corroded beyond repair. The admiration I once held for her disintegrated, the affection I felt drained away, the attraction, snuffed out, love, reduced to a hollow shell of what it once was. If you've ever seen the aftermath of a hurricane, you understand the destruction, so vast, so consuming, that rebuilding seems impossible. Sometimes, all you can do is walk away. That's what I resolved to do. There was nothing left worth saving. She had taken everything we had and twisted it into something grotesque, something unrecognizable. Our marriage was over. It all unraveled with an argument. Nothing extraordinary. We had our share of disagreements. But this one spiraled into something neither of us saw coming. Abigail wanted to redecorate the living room, claiming the furniture was outdated and lifeless. I argued that it was practically new, only 2 years old, and had cost a fortune. Throwing it out made no sense, but she refused to drop it. She kept pushing, insisting she was sick of it. Frustration got the best of me, and I blurted out, "Guess you're sick of me too. That it? Looking for someone new because you're bored? Why can't you just appreciate what you have?" Her response came sharp and immediate. "Maybe I should. Maybe then you'd finally see what you have and what you stand to lose." Anger surged. "Then figure out what the hell you want, Abigail, but don't expect me to be waiting when you're done." Then she delivered the final blow. Maybe I should have married Buck instead. He wouldn't be such a stingy bastard. That did it. I snapped. "Fuck you, and fuck him too. I never want to hear his name again. And guess what? No new furniture. Not now, not ever. This conversation is over." I stormed out, got in my car, and drove straight to the club. I needed a drink. Several, actually. And space to cool off. But the fury still simmered beneath the surface, and hearing his name, Buck, the one person I despised above all, only fanned the flames. Buck had always been the golden boy. Everything he touched turned to success, admired by all. Everything except for one thing. He had tried to claim Abigail. During a brief breakup early in our relationship, he pursued her relentlessly. He nearly won. Nearly. But in the end, she chose me. I built my life through hard work and determination. Buck never had to fight for anything. His name alone opened every door. Was I envious? Not of his career. But when it came to Abigail, that was a different story. I never forgot that she had once been his, that he had once touched her. Around 9 p.m., my phone rang. Our home number. I wasn't ready to talk to her, so I let it go to voicemail. I was still too furious, and with alcohol in my system, I knew I'd say something I'd regret. Later, I checked the message. Her voice came through quieter than before. "Jeremy, I just wanted to say I'm sorry for what I said earlier. I guess you don't care enough to answer, but you saw it was me. Since you're not coming home, I think I'll take a walk. See you later." Hearing her voice softened my anger, briefly. Then it reignited. I downed another beer and set out to find her. I drove to every bar in town, searching for her car, but she was nowhere to be found. Frustrated, I headed to her best friend Mia's house, and there it was, her car parked out front. I knocked, and Mia's husband Charles answered. "Hey, Jeremy. Heard you and Abigail had a fight. They're not here, though. Decided to do some bar hopping." I pressed him for details, and he mentioned Mia was driving an excursion, with plans to start at Bachelor's before heading elsewhere. I drove straight to Bachelor's. Sure enough, Mia's SUV was in the lot. I debated storming in, but decided to wait and see where the night led. At 11 p.m. they left and moved to another bar. I followed at a distance. As Charles had predicted, they ended up at Down the Hill. More drinks, more waiting. At 11:30 they moved again, this time to Fuzzy's Pub at the Ramada Plaza Hotel. Midnight struck. Mia left. But Abigail stayed. Alone. What the hell was she doing? Suspicion churned in my gut. I grabbed an old team jersey and a baseball cap from my trunk, hoping to blend in. I wasn't completely sober, but I had sobered up enough to think straight. I walked in and took a seat in a shadowed corner, scanning the room. And then I saw her. She wasn't alone. Buck sat across from her in a secluded booth, tucked into the farthest corner. My stomach twisted into knots. A booth behind Abigail sat empty, so I slid in, just within earshot. They were so engrossed in each other that I could have been standing next to them, and they wouldn't have noticed. "Thanks for coming, Buck," Abigail said. "I didn't want to leave Mia alone all night." "No problem," he replied smoothly. "You know I love it when you and Jeremy fight. It's the only time you let me have you." My heart slammed against my ribs. 7 years ago, you two broke up, he continued. And I had you then, and I've had you twice since you married him. And tonight, I'd love to have you again. I just wish you two fought more often. Abigail laughed softly. "I love him, Buck. But when he pisses me off like today, I just need to get intimate in retaliation, just so he doesn't win." That was it. Hearing her words, her confession, everything I thought I knew about our marriage crumbled. She could claim she loved me all she wanted, but love doesn't use another person as a weapon. Love doesn't betray like that. This wasn't love. This was selfish, heartless treachery, and it changed everything. Right or wrong, she shattered me, along with whatever love I once felt for her. Don't waste your breath calling me a fool. I won't listen. Reality is what it is, and I've accepted that my feelings for her are long gone. I grieved for what we had, but our time was over. I lingered for a brief moment, wondering just how much longer before they arrived at the room. It didn't take long before I heard him murmur, "So, Abigail, are you ready for me?" I could practically see the smug grin on her lips. I had witnessed it before, always paired with that same self-satisfied smirk. Their timing played in their favor. They stood, made their way toward the elevators. I was prepared to act. Perhaps fate was on my side because I had the means to destroy them both. I waited a moment, then followed them into the lobby. Unsure of their exact location, I approached the house phone and requested to be connected to Buck Major's room. After 3 rings, he answered, his voice laced with irritation. "Who the hell is calling at this hour?" he barked. Feigning confusion, I asked, "Is this room 315? "No, it's not 315. "Who the hell are you?" he snapped before slamming the receiver down. Undeterred, I dialed again. This time, when he answered, I pressed on. "I could have sworn this was 315. You sure you're not messing with me? It's 315, isn't it? You drunken idiot," he growled. "I told you this isn't 315. It's 432. If you call again, I'll have the manager send the cops after you." Then, he hung up. A fool, huh? If anyone here was a fool, it was the man who had just given away his exact whereabouts to an enraged husband. Let's take a vote. Who's the real idiot? Without hesitation, I took the elevator to the 4th floor and strode down the hallway until I reached room 432. I stood outside, listening. The moment I confirmed they were in the midst of their betrayal, I pounded my fist against the door. A frustrated voice from inside groaned, "Oh, for fuck's sake!" His annoyance thrilled me. He had no idea how much worse his night was about to get. Stepping out of view, I waited. The second the door cracked open, I kicked it in with such force that the chain lock snapped, sending it flying inward. There she was, sprawled on the bed, completely exposed, caught red-handed. Her eyes went wide with terror, color draining from her face as a shriek escaped her lips. I almost expected her to pass out. Oh God. No. Oh God. Oh God. Buck snapped out of his daze, his voice a poor attempt at authority. Jeremy, get the hell out of my room. I'll call security. Remember what I said about idiots? I drove my fist into his gut, knocking the air from his lungs. He collapsed to the floor, gasping, useless. He wasn't a threat anymore. Turning to Abigail, I let my anger flow freely. You deceitful, pathetic liar. I know everything. I heard you at Fuzzy's. You're not coming home tonight. That would be a terrible mistake. Tears streamed down her face, her voice quivering. Oh God, no. Jeremy, please, let me explain. It meant nothing. I love you. I scoffed. You heard me. Don't be foolish enough to come back to our house. It won't end well for you. And yes, take that as a threat. With that, I turned and walked out. The fact that I had only thrown one punch was a miracle. My words had been ruthless, but they could have been worse. Once inside my car, I sat in silence, forcing myself to breathe, to steady the storm raging inside me. I waited, watching. If the police arrived, or if they tried to slip away, I wanted to know. 15 minutes later, Buck emerged, climbed into his car, and drove off. Shortly after, Abigail followed, getting into an SUV with Mia. At least they didn't stay behind for another round. The betrayal was done, but witnessing them continue would have been an extra knife to the heart. With my decision made, I drove home and went straight to bed. I didn't even glance at the clock when the phone rang. The caller ID flashed Mia's name. Jeremy, I know you're angry and don't want Abigail coming home, but I just wanted to let you know she's staying with Charles and me. You don't have to worry about her. I sighed. Mia, I wasn't worried. I don't care anymore. Why are you calling so late? It's 3 in the morning, and don't act like you don't care. I know you love her, and she loves you. She's here crying, saying she was an idiot and begging for your forgiveness. I cut her off. Ask her if her idiocy includes the 2 other times she slept with Buck before tonight. Silence. Then, in a stunned whisper, oh God, no. She hadn't known. But I had. Morning brought clarity. By 10, I was ready for the final act. I called Mia's house and told her Abigail could return, if she wanted. She arrived minutes later, Charles and Mia flanking her like guards. The moment Abigail stepped out of the car, her eyes widened at the sight before her. Jeremy? What is all this? Everything that reminds me of you. Everything we shared, every picture from our 7-year marriage, every piece of furniture you insisted on replacing. And this? I held up our wedding photo. I placed it atop the pile, stepped back, and struck a match. The flames caught immediately, consuming every last relic of our past, a blazing monument to what we once had. Abigail stood frozen, horrified. You win, Abigail. I heard you tell Buck you never wanted me to win. I hope it was worth it. Our marriage is over. You can have the rest. I don't want any of it. You'll hear from my lawyer. Moments later, sirens echoed in the distance. The police arrived, followed by the fire department. The fire was quickly reduced to nothing but smoldering ash. Just getting rid of what's left of a broken marriage, I told the officers. They arrested me anyway. Days passed in a cell. A psychiatrist evaluated me and, to my surprise, found me perfectly sane. Wounded and betrayed, but sane. Once released, I retrieved my car, checked into a motel, and started the slow process of rebuilding my life. Abigail fought the divorce, flooding me with messages, pleading for a chance to talk. It meant nothing, she insisted. I left her one final response. Abigail, it meant nothing to you, but it meant everything to me. Goodbye. She never called again. The divorce was finalized, and I let her take everything. I wanted nothing of our past. As for Buck, his wife uncovered the truth, divorced him, and dragged his name through the dirt. Turns out, Abigail was just one of many. Not long after, I spotted him at Fuzzy's. He didn't have time to flee before I leaned in and warned, "Stick around, and you might find yourself in an unfortunate accident." He got the message, liquidated his assets, disappeared. No one seemed to miss him. And Abigail, she still stops me in town, still begs for a moment of my time. I always nod and keep walking. Maybe one day I'll turn back. Maybe. My friend, and this is the end of the story. If you liked this story, then put your royal like and subscribe to the channel. May the force be with you. Greetings, my dear viewer. This is a channel about marital infidelity and about the consequences if one spouse starts to cheat on the other. If you, as well as I do, support true family values and condemn cheating, then subscribe to the channel and give this video a like. Let's get started. It was a quiet Monday evening, the clock nearing 7:30. I had been immersed in a demanding project in my home office, which still loomed over me with unfinished tasks. Deciding to call it a night, I wandered into the softly lit kitchen, retrieved a chilled bottle of my go-to Indian Pale Ale from the fridge, and took a sip. My gaze drifted toward the window, and there she was, Joy, lounging on the outdoor sofa near the fire pit and pool. Her legs were tucked beneath her as she chatted animatedly on her phone. I considered stepping outside to join her, but paused when I noticed her familiar habit of twisting a strand of her blonde hair around her fingers. It was a small, unconscious gesture I had come to recognize deeply over the nearly 3 decades of our life together. This subtle trait, far from flirtatious, had always seemed a soulful quirk, a reminder of countless late-night phone calls during my business trips. I would picture her just like this, hair twisting absent-mindedly, even though hundreds of miles separated us. That simple thought used to comfort me, filling the emptiness of those lonely nights. Through the window, I observed her radiant smile and light-hearted laughter, her presence illuminating the cool evening. Although I couldn't see the sparkle in her eyes from my vantage point, I was certain it was there. But as I watched, admiration shifted to a growing unease. She appeared entirely too engaged, too vibrant, as if speaking to someone who held a special place in her heart. For 45 agonizing minutes, I stood rooted, watching her share a connection that seemed far too intimate to exclude me. When she finally ended the call, the dreamy smile lingering on her face felt like a knife twisting in my chest. Feeling hollow, I retreated to the family room and flipped on the TV, pretending to care about a local baseball game. A little while later, Joy entered and asked, "How long have you been done with work?" "A while," I responded flatly. "Why didn't you come out back?" she pressed. "You were on the phone. I didn't want to interrupt," I replied casually. "Oh, for heaven's sake, that was just Steve. We were talking about the Phillips account," she explained dismissively. I nodded and turned back to the game. But I could feel her eyes on me, searching for something beneath the surface. She disappeared into the kitchen, returning moments later with a glass of wine before settling on the couch beside me. "What's the score?" she asked. "Not sure," I admitted. She chuckled lightly. "Do you even know who the Sox are playing?" "The Blue Jays," I answered absently. We sat in silence through half an inning until a commercial break prompted her to speak again. "Let's have the kids over for a barbecue on Saturday," she suggested. "Sure," I replied curtly. She tried to spark a conversation, but my brief, indifferent responses seemed to deflate her. Eventually, she asked, "Chris, what's wrong?" "Nothing," I lied. "You're not yourself tonight. Do you want to talk about it?" She pressed gently. "No," I said firmly. The silence stretched into the next inning until, as if to dispel the tension, she stood up and removed her blue V-neck t-shirt with practiced ease. Smiling playfully, she said, "How about turning off the TV and coming upstairs? I'm sure I can help you relax." "Not tonight, Joy. I'm not in the mood," I replied flatly. Her grin widened as she reached for me. Come on, big boy. Mama needs you, she teased. I met her gaze and said coldly, "What part of not in the mood don't you understand?" Her face fell. "What's your problem? I was just trying to be nice," she said defensively. "Joy, you turn me down at least twice a week. The one time I say no, you act like a child. Grow up and leave me alone," I shot back, my voice sharp. She glared at me, her expression hard enough to cut steel, before storming out of the room. For the first time in our marriage, I found myself sleeping in the guest room, or rather, lying awake, staring at the ceiling and devising a plan. By 3 a.m., I knew there was no point in staying in bed. I showered in the kids' old bathroom, then slipped into the master bedroom to quietly collect my clothes without waking her. Before heading to work, I installed tracking apps on both her personal and work phones, syncing them to my devices. Though I arrived at the office with a pounding headache and too much caffeine in my system, I managed to power through and finalize a crucial presentation. It was imperative to prepare for my 2-day trip starting early the next morning. Tuesday evening was icy at best. We exchanged few words, and any pretense of intimacy was absent. By Wednesday morning, I was on my way to the airport for a 7:20 a.m. flight. The day went well. I made significant progress with the client and felt optimistic about closing the deal. But every few hours I checked Joy's location. She was either at home or work, yet a gnawing feeling of distrust persisted. That night, as I dined alone in the Marriott lounge, I checked the tracker again. At 7:30 p.m., her location pinged at an upscale neighborhood miles away. The address? Her boss's house. My suspicions crystallized. The months that followed were tense, yet passed quickly. I remained polite but distant, while Joy made visible efforts to repair our relationship. Our intimate moments, when they happened, felt mechanical and devoid of genuine connection. Tracking her movements confirmed my fears. She confined her affair to the times I traveled. Discreet cameras I installed around the house revealed her packing bags and heading to Steve's whenever I was away. Acting on advice from a lawyer, I hired a private investigator. The evidence he uncovered left no doubt. Joy and Steve were caught in intimate acts in his backyard, recklessly exposed despite their secrecy. The images were irrefutable. Armed with this proof, I began laying the groundwork for the inevitable. On Thursday evening, I made the most painful phone calls of my life to our 3 grown children. As I explained my decision to divorce their mother, I broke down each time. When they questioned me, I asked, "Do you want me to show you the evidence?" None of them could respond. By Friday morning, everything was set in motion. Nearly 3 decades of marriage had come to an undeniable and heartbreaking end. Thankfully, everyone else said no, leaving me with a deep sense of relief. Joy picked up on the 4th ring. "Hey, sweetheart, this is a nice surprise. How are your meetings going?" Her voice was warm and inviting. "Hey, love, meetings are the usual grind. You know how it goes. How's work?" I asked. "I'm just glad it's Friday. I've been counting down until you're home. It's been such a lonely week, and I'm really hoping we can make up for it this weekend," she replied with a playful lilt. Her indirectness about work didn't go unnoticed. Over the last few months, I'd come to recognize Joy's knack for avoiding certain details. She continued, "So, what made you call me out of the blue?" "I've got a question for you," I began cautiously. "It might seem strange, but I'd like an honest answer. This must be serious. You hardly ever call like this." "What is it?" she asked, intrigued. "Do you like my smile?" I said. "Your smile? What kind of question is that?" "Of course I adore your smile," she replied, sounding slightly puzzled. "You've said that many times before," I reminded her. "It was actually the first thing you ever said to me. Remember that night at the frat party? You walked straight over, leaving your friends behind, and told me, 'You've got a great smile.'" Her tone shifted, tension creeping in. "Chris, what's going on? You're starting to worry me." I tried to keep my voice steady. I've always tried to stay positive, to focus on the good. Even when times were hard, being with you and raising our 3 amazing kids made it all worth it. That's one of the things I love most about you, she said softly. Your optimism, your smile, your strength, all of it. You're everything a man should be, Chris. I love you for that. The tears came then, unstoppable. Despite everything, her love for me was undeniable. Her voice grew more urgent. Christopher Harrington, tell me what's wrong. Please. Her sincerity only deepened the pain of what I needed to say. I don't think I can smile anymore, I admitted, after a long pause. The silence that followed was heavy, stretching out for what felt like an eternity. I imagined her thoughts racing, fear growing as she tried to make sense of my words. Chris, you're scaring me. Just tell me what's going on, she pleaded. It's too late, Joy. Talking won't fix anything, I said. No, don't say that. It's never too late for us. We can work through this together, she insisted, her voice breaking. I shook my head, even though she couldn't see. Conversations require trust, respect, and love. I know you love me, Joy, and I love you too. But I can't trust you anymore, and you've lost respect for me. Without those, there's no way forward. She tried to interrupt, but I pressed on. Respect is gone, Joy. Go to the living room window, I instructed. What? Chris, what are you talking about? She asked, panic rising in her voice. Get up from Steve's lounge chair, walk through his kitchen, and look out the front window, I said firmly. The line went silent until her scream shattered the quiet. Oh God, no, he knows. Chris knows. From my vantage point 75 feet away in Steve's driveway, I watched through the front window. Joy stood frozen beside Steve Davis, her lover, her boss, and the owner of this house. The sun's glare masked some details, but their outlines were unmistakable. I climbed into the U-Haul truck, backed it up, and stopped abruptly in the circular driveway. Boxes spilled out, tumbling onto the pavement and lawn. The sound of fragile items breaking was sharp and final. Among the shattered pieces were fragments of her great-grandmother's china. Joy emerged onto the steps, wearing the bikini I'd given her for our anniversary, the one she saved exclusively for him. Steve followed, awkwardly wrapped in a robe. They didn't notice the unfamiliar car parked nearby until a woman got out, approached, and handed each of them a yellow envelope. Joy Harrington, you've been served, she announced, snapping a photo. Then she turned to Steve. Stephen Davis, you and your firm, Smith, Davis & Lewis, have also been served. Another photo, and she walked away. No one moved at first. Finally, I spoke, my voice carrying clearly across the yard. I think we can all agree I deserve better than a deceitful, unfaithful wife. Joy groaned, but stayed silent. Turning to Steve, I said, contact my attorney and make a generous settlement offer, or I'll ensure you and your firm are ruined. Joy, sign the papers. We're done. Without waiting for a response, I climbed back into the truck and drove away, leaving behind their stunned expressions and my broken past. My friend, and this is the end of the story. If you liked this story, then put your royal like and subscribe to the channel. May the force be with you.